Hi everyone, welcome to Elvis Presley Past, Present and Future, where we are continuing on with our Elvis journey. In our last episode, Elvis had just joined up with Sam Phillips and he had recorded a couple of songs. So let's continue from there. On August 10, 1954, 2 weeks after his first appearance, on July 31, Elvis again performed at the Overton Park Shell, but this time as an unbilled artist. With his stage moves, he wowed his fans regularly, evoking hysterical responses from the female audience members. For the early show, he played a set of country ballads to a lukewarm response. But for the late performance, he concentrated on up-tempo material and whipped the crowd into such a frenzy that headliner Webb Pierce, then one of the country's biggest stars, refused to perform. This is the show that people remembered as the beginning of the Elvis Wiggle. Some weeks later, the bookings expanded to clubs and halls outside of the city. But Sam Phillips had bigger plans. He saw an opportunity for Elvis and his band to make a national mark, so he began to work on Grand Ole Opry manager James Jim Denny in order to get Elvis on the bill at the Opry. He approached Denny to get the group on the bill. Denny, who was less than enthusiastic about the idea, agreed to think about it. Finally, Denny succumbed to Sam Phillips' argument that there is no need to think about putting the boy on as a regular. Just try it out and give the boy a chance. Denny finally agreed. Or maybe he was just worn down by Phillips' persistence. He gave the young man a one-time spot on Hank Snow's segment of the show. He told Sam Phillips that he could perform a single song. Sam Phillips and the boys would need to drive over 200 miles just for that one song. The Grand Ole Opry is the longest-lived radio show of US broadcast history. The Opry began just 5 years after commercial radio was born in the US. In 1925, the National Life and Accident Insurance Company built a radio station as a public service to the local community, with the hope that the new medium could advertise insurance policies. The station's call letters, WSM, stood for the company's motto, "We Shield Millions." On October 2, 1954, a teenage Elvis made his first and only appearance at the Grand Ole Opry, which was at Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. It was his first live performance on national radio broadcast, WSM. The auditorium first opened as the Union Gospel Tabernacle in 1892. It was built by Thomas Ryman, a riverboat captain and Nashville businessman who owned several saloons. Ryman conceived the auditorium as a tabernacle for the influential revivalist Samuel Porter Jones. After Ryman's death, the tabernacle was renamed Ryman Auditorium in his honour. The Ryman Auditorium was like a tattered shrine to the three musicians. None of them had ever attended a show at the Grand Ole Opry before. They wandered around the old building, which still retained the old wooden pews for seats, in kind of a daze. They were both overwhelmed at the sense of history that was contained in the room, and also the music they had been listening to all their life had come from this cramped stage. Backstage, the other musicians mingled freely, exchanging small talk and greetings, turning up, donning makeup and costumes, without any of the formality or protocol they might have expected from stars. They found the stage manager, who stared at Elvis as if he were a new species. Scotty and Bill carried in their instruments and handed Elvis his stage outfit, which was an eye-shocking Beale Street special. While waiting for their appearance, Elvis grew exceedingly nervous. As Elvis paced nervously backstage, he met and had his first conversation with the legendary Hank Snow. Snow asked him, "What's your name?" And Elvis replied, "Elvis Presley, sir." "No," Snow replied. "What name do you sing under?" Sam Phillips approached the two men and said, "Hello, Hank. I'm Sam Phillips, and this kid sings under a name that's dynamite." Snow walked away shaking his head. He chuckled to himself at the kid's mismatched shoddy clothes. The kid wore a funny-looking sports coat, accentuated by the strangest pair of pants he'd ever seen. Buddy Colleen, a 21-year-old bass player at the Opry, recalls, "I noticed a young man standing off to the side. He looked tearful and lost, shaking and pacing with his guitar on his back. 'Hi,' I said, 'I'm Buddy Colleen. I play bass on the Opry.' 'Hi,' he sort of mumbled. 'I'm Elvis Presley. If Sam Phillips would let me leave, I'd get out of here. These people are going to hate me.' 'You'll do fine,' Buddy said to him, and hoped that he would. Marty Robbins saw the same insecurity, but when Elvis spotted Chet Atkins backstage, he introduced himself, and then, knowing Scotty's admiration for Atkins' guitar playing, pulled Scotty over too, saying, "My guitar player wants to meet you." Atkins noticed that the kid appeared to be wearing eye makeup. At 10:15, Grant Turner announced the Hank Snow segment of the show, sponsored by Royal Crown Cola. Hank Snow got lost in his introduction of the young man from Memphis who had just made a hit record. He said, "Let's give him a nice round of applause." He forgot the young singer's name. But Elvis bounced out the same way as he always did, as if he'd just fallen off a fast-moving train. He performed a rockin' version of Bill Monroe's Blue Moon of Kentucky. Some listeners in the audience found it distasteful. His music and gyrating performance were not received well at the conservative establishment. After a polite audience response, Jim Denny told Elvis, "Thank you very much, Mr. Presley. We appreciate your visit, but I'm sorry, your act isn't quite right for the Opry at this time." Denny also told Sam Phillips, "The boy's not bad." In an era when the Grand Ole Opry represented solely country music, the audience did not accept Elvis on the Opry because of his infusion of rhythm and blues, as well as his infamous body gyrations, which many viewed as vulgar. Mingling backstage with the other artists, Elvis saw Bill Monroe, the composer of the Blue Moon of Kentucky, who was also on the bill at the Opry, and Elvis was worried that his rockabilly version of the song would annoy the legendary Monroe. He introduced himself to Bill Monroe and apologised for doing the song the way that he did. Bill Monroe remembers, "He came to the Grand Ole Opry one time and came in the dressing room where I was at. He apologised for the way he had changed Blue Moon of Kentucky. I told him, 'Well, son, if it gives you your start, it's all right with me.'" Elvis, Scotty and Bill left not long afterward and wandered down the hill to 417 Broadway, the location of the Ernest Tubb record shop, where they were scheduled to play the famous Midnight Jamboree, which went on the air live from the record store at the conclusion of the Opry broadcast. Someone introduced Elvis to Ernest Tubb, and Tubb, the most gracious and courteous of all entertainers, listened patiently as the 19-year-old poured out his love for Tubb's music and told him that it was his real ambition to sing country music. Ernest Tubb said Elvis told him, "They tell me if I'm going to make any money, I've got to sing this other kind of music. What should I do?" Tubb said, "Elvis, do you have any money?" He said, "No, sir." I said, "Well, you just go ahead and do what they tell you to do. Make your money. Then you can do what you want to do." Sam Phillips had also heard from the Louisiana Hayride, the Opry's new rival in Shreveport. which actually wanted this new act. The hayride, which Denny referred to as Opry's Farm Club, because so many of its big acts defected to Nashville, had discovered Hank Williams and stars such as Slim Whitman, Webb Pierce, and most recently Jim Reeves and Farron Young. But Sam refused the inquiry. He explained to hayride booking agent Pappy Covington he wanted to play the Opry first. As soon as the boys had fulfilled his prior commitment, he told Pappy, stretching the truth a little, Elvis could appear on the hayride. There was no doubt in his mind that Elvis would make a hit on the hayride, and they could set it up for a week or two after the Opry appearance, but he had committed himself to Jim Denny. Sam knew he was walking a thin line. He didn't for a minute want to lose the hayride, but he wasn't going to give up on the opportunity for the world to see a new, untried artist get his national debut at the Grand Ole Opry. 6 days before Elvis appeared at the Opry, his second single, Good Rockin' Tonight, with the B-side of I Don't Care If the Sun Don't Shine, recorded on September 10, 1954, was released and proved to be a natural follow-up. The song came from the same current R&B scene, and it rocked a lot more than It's Alright Mama, and was a convincing demonstration that Elvis's first record was no fluke. Sam Phillips said, getting to know the boy a little better, getting him to open up a little more, giving him the chance to talk, and not just about music, but about life and love and women, I sensed the potential that I had not yet fully anticipated. I was amazed. Here I am, 12 years older than him. I'm 31, he's 19. And I've been exposed to all kinds of music and lived through the Depression. And yet he had the most intuitive ability to hear songs without ever having to classify them or himself. It seemed like he had a photographic memory for every song he had ever heard. And he was one of the most introspective human beings I've ever met. You see, Elvis Presley knew what it was like to be poor, but that sure didn't make him any kind of prejudiced. He didn't draw any lines. You have to be an awful smart person, or dumb as hell, and you know he wasn't dumb, to put out that kind of thinking. The lack of interest from the Grand Ole Opry may have been a blessing in disguise. Only 2 weeks later, on October 16, Elvis makes his first appearance as a guest on the popular Shreveport radio show Louisiana Hayride, and quickly becomes a fan favourite. Elvis went to the Louisiana Hayride, the Opry's biggest competitor, shortly thereafter, and he signed a contract to make 52 Saturday night appearances in Shreveport, home of the Hayride. That helped launch his legendary career. Elvis, Scotty and Bill toured as the Hillbilly Cat and the Blue Moon Boys. Bill often wore their Western style Stunlight Wrangler costumes, or black and white shirts with white ties. Elvis, on the other hand, preferred the style of clothing that black rhythm and blues artists often wore: flashy, hip, bold and urban. This type of clothing could be purchased on Beale Street, especially at Ansky Brothers. Elvis favoured pleated pants with wide legs, which virtually vibrated when Elvis bounced on the balls of his feet while performing. On October 23, 1954, Blue Moon of Kentucky hits the top 10 in Nashville and the New Orleans market, representing his first hit outside of Memphis. On October 25, Elvis records 5 songs at KWKH in Shreveport, LA. None of these records exist today. In November 1954, Elvis, Scotty and Bill took another important step in establishing their professional careers. Scotty was acting as the group's manager, but he and Sam Phillips knew they needed more professional representation. They hired Bob Neil to be their official manager. On November 6, 1954, Elvis signed a one-year contract for all the Saturday night shows. Because Elvis was underage, Gladys and Vernon had to come to Shreveport to sign the contract with him. Per appearance, Elvis got $18. Scotty Moore and Bill Black each $12. The hayride was the basis of Elvis's early rise to stardom. Then on March 15, 1955, Neil signed another agreement with Elvis, giving him 15% commission. Newspaper report was also published in the paper. Neil had a considerable following in many small communities around the city and frequently promoted shows featuring acts like Elvis, Kitty Wells, Bill Carlisle and others. While at the hayride, Elvis Presley and the group stayed at the Alida Motel in Bossier City across the river, and the girls started showing up almost as soon as they arrived. It's as if they knew he was there, like they sensed his presence. For a kid who had spent scarcely a night away from home in his 19 years, it was like being away at summer camp. He had always loved flirting with the girls. He loved playing with them and teasing them, but now there was no one around to see that it didn't go too far. And they didn't seem too concerned about it either. In between shows at the auditorium, he would peek out from behind the curtain. Then, when he spotted someone that he liked, swagger over to the concession stand, place his arm over her shoulder, and drape his other arm around someone else, acting almost like he was drunk, even though everyone knew he didn't drink. At some point in 1954, Bob Neil arranged a tour for Elvis, together with the Brown sisters, Bonnie, Maxine, Jim, Ed, and the Levine brothers, Ira and Charlie. Tom Perryman, manager of the Browns, introduced the Browns to Elvis. Maxine Brown recalls, "I'm so happy to meet you all," she said. He said, "I have been listening to the Browns since you all started." The first time I met Elvis, I told him my mother had predicted he'd be a big star. He just laughed shyly. He wasn't any better looking than a dozen other studs on the music scene. He was slender and walked with a sexy hitch to his hips. He wore his hair full and wavy, with a teasy strand on his forehead and long sideburns, which were just becoming the smoky fashion for the cool cats of those days. But it was these deep, staring eyes that mesmerized all the girls, and those sexy, sultry lips and hips. In those days, you truly had no idea how big he would become. I don't ever think anyone had any idea. He didn't have a big head, or even gave fame a second thought. He was too busy having fun and being young. Maxine continues, "I believed he would have been a constant to sing the way he did on the hayride. His favourite music by far was old-time gospel. Many a night we'd sit up late and sing the old hymns. Elvis was the last to want to quit singing. He often said that his big dream was to make it as a gospel artist. That's what his mother wanted for him too. Few know this, but there were actually two Elvises inside the one." She said, "As we travelled the road with him, we began to see both these sides. He could be very, very shy, the sensitive mama's boy. He could be as wild as a joker in a game of spit in the ocean. Yet to be with him day to day, facing the grind of the road to really understand him. It's a little strange now to look back and remember when the Brown Trio got top billing over Elvis Presley." On November 8, 1954, Elvis made a solo appearance without Scotty and Bill, and played at the Memphis State University for a blood drive on behalf of the Student Government Association. He had only released 2 singles at this point with Sun Records. In this picture, Elvis is with Barbara Burnett Pitchard, Memphis State Dean R.M. Robertson, and Mayor Frank Toby, who holds Elvis's brand new Martin D8 guitar. Elvis was such an unknown at the time, he's not even identified in the photo. Barbara Burnett was an SMC student in 1954. She recalls the Memphis State College Student Government Association was sponsoring a blood drive and needed an entertainer. An SGA representative had heard Elvis was available and cheap. We needed something or somebody to help draw a crowd, and decided a guitar strumming good old boy at $35 an hour might just do the job. Elvis performed about 90 minutes, and the audience went crazy. The audience got larger and larger until the auditorium was filled to capacity. Elvis was dressed in a rather subdued cowboy outfit a la Gene Autry. He performed alone with a plain acoustic guitar. My memory of Elvis was that he was extremely courteous, polite, and very shy. Dean R.M. Robertson and Mayor Frank Toby were as astonished with Elvis's act as they were with the swelling crowd. The bottom line was, this was the most successful Red Cross blood drive in the history of the Memphis State to see Elvis. Students had to donate a pint of blood just to see Elvis. Girls weighing less than 110 pounds could not donate. Many of these wore weights underneath their skirts, miraculously gaining several pounds almost instantly. An interesting note: on November 6, 1954, Elvis made an advertisement for a product, namely Southern Made Donuts. He sang the jingle. You can get 'em piping hot after 4 p.m. Southern Maine Donuts hit the spot. You can get 'em piping hot after 4 p.m. It is not known if Elvis's voice had an influence on the sale of the donuts. Elvis frequented the Shreveport store for donuts on his visits to the Louisiana Hayride. During the following year, he would travel nearly 500,000 miles on his tours, often before an audience which heard him for the first time at the Hayride broadcasts. For the entire year of 1955, Elvis came every Saturday night back to Shreveport for his appearances. On November 26, 1954, Elvis sends a telegram home to his father. Hi babies, here's the money to pay the bills. Stop. Don't tell no one how much I sent you. I will send more next week. Stop. There is a card in the mail. Stop. Love, Elvis. Throughout December, Elvis, Scotty and Bill travelled back and forward from Memphis, playing gigs in nearby Helena, Arkansas, Corinth, Mississippi, and Gatewater, Texas. Billboard magazine called the act the hottest piece of merchandise on the Louisiana Hayride, and cited Elvis as the youngster with the hillbilly blues beat. They played in schools, church, social events, service areas, nightclubs, and even at the inauguration of a new central ventilation system of a building. Shake, Rattle and Roll and Hearts of Stone, 2 current rhythm and blues hits, were added to their song list, and Milk Cow Boogie Blues became Elvis's 3rd release on Sun Records. 11th of December 1954, Elvis made another appearance on the Louisiana Hayride. He was also a guest on the Red River Roundup record show, which followed the Hayride, on KWKH Radio. At 11 p.m, the latter hosted by Bob Strack, who kidded Elvis Presley about his music, remarking that Presley records were very popular. Pointing his finger out the window, Strack laughed as 50 lovesick girls stared through the KWKH glass pane. Strack commented on other signs of Presley's popularity. The screams from the girls in the audience at the Hayride, Strack remarked, were not typical of the show. "You're something special," Strack informed Elvis. Strack also commented that the phone calls requesting Elvis music tripled when he performed in the Shreveport area. During the interview, Strack asked Elvis Presley about his success. Elvis said, "I never had too high hopes or ideals because the circumstances of our lives didn't give us room to dream too big." This humility was honest and characteristic of Elvis Presley during his early years. He was unaffected by show business. By 1955, Elvis Presley had gone from a local to a national sensation. People quickly fell in love with his amazing voice and pelvic thrusting hips. Elvis gained more and more popularity. Elvis's live appearance held tremendous appeal for teenagers, especially the girls. His sexy moves, unusual style, and good looks sparked entertainment that increased with every performance. Sometimes the near riotous behaviour erupted with these kids screaming and breaking through barriers. One of his next concerts was scheduled for February 6, 1955 at Ellis Auditorium in Memphis. The auditorium was located in downtown Memphis on the corner of Poplar and Front Street. Elvis, Scotty and Bill performed for the first time at Ellis. They were part of Bob Neil's 5-Star Jamboree. Further acts were Farron Young, Verlin Husky, Martha Carson, the Wilburn Brothers, J.E. and Maxine Brown, George McCormick, and Texas Bill Strength. This appearance was much more important than his first appearance at the Overton Shell Park on July 30, 1954. Elvis, Scotty and Bill played both shows, one at 3 p.m. and the second at 8 p.m. Elvis entered the stage with the famous walk on him, like a tiger that just got out of a cage. He picked up the microphone and started dragging it across the stage. He was doing things that hadn't been done yet, unless you went down to Beale Street and saw a rhythm and blues artist. Elvis was all along the stage. Memphis DJ Dewey Phillips, who played Elvis's first record on his radio show Red Hot and Blue, also joined Elvis on stage during the concert. Elvis was quite nervous, Dewey Phillips recalls, and he requested that I be with him for the matinee. But Sam Phillips and I were at my house drinking beer and I missed the afternoon show. Elvis came looking for me, mad as hell. He had tried singing Old Shep, and that's where your heartaches begin, but apparently wasn't able to get much response from the audience. So I accompanied Elvis to the evening show. Elvis forgot the hillbilly routine and opened with Good Rockin' Tonight. Dewey Phillips not only served as an MC, but also stayed on stage while Elvis performed, even breaking out in an impromptu duet with him. An event captured in this photo by Robert Dye. He went into Good Rockin' Tonight and started to shake the place. It just blew apart. These people would not let him leave. In between shows, Bob Neil, in his capacity as manager, set up a meeting between Sam Phillips, Colonel Parker and Tom Diskin at Palumbo's restaurant. The reason was to introduce Sam Phillips, Elvis, Scotty and Bill to Parker, who had recently taken over the management of Hank Snow and was his partner in the founded Jamboree attraction. But the meeting didn't go well. Parker explained to Sam Phillips that Elvis wasn't going nowhere on a small label like Sun Records. Sam Phillips did not react well to this piece of information, and Parker silently revises his plan without ever retreating. Parker first took notice of Elvis when he attended one of the shows at the Louisiana Hayride, particularly his energetic and his intense singing and performing style. That was the time when Parker decided to keep a close eye on the kid with the high-powered act. After touring across the South, Elvis came back to Memphis and attended his girlfriend Dixie Locke's junior prom on May 5, 1955. In between recording and touring, Elvis also took some time out from work to enjoy himself at the fairgrounds on the Mid-South Fair. This would be the last time that Elvis would be able to simply go visit friends. So that's it. Elvis's career is really taking off. And you notice the entry of Tom Parker there, who saw Elvis at the Hayride. Let's find out in our next video what happens with all of that. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and write a comment about what you think of the videos. Write a video about, let me know, write a comment about what you think of Sam Neil taking over as the producer. What do you think about Sam Phillips knocking back the Hayride? Let me know. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time. Bye.